Welcome back, readers, to The Secret Lake. Today we're on Chapter 8, A Moonlight Raid. Over 2 hours had passed and the light was fading fast. Tom had fallen asleep under the tree, and Jack and Stella had been lazing in the bank of the lake, describing life in their own times. The last of Stella's polos had gone. "The moles better come soon," said Stella anxiously. "I'll stay with you till they do, like I said Jack. "But we'll have to go over for some supplies if they ain't here by nightfall. I wasn't counting on us and be up and using up me bread, and that little un's gonna need something more before long." Stella's heart began to race. "To the house?" she whispered. "Course." Jack reached inside the ankle boot and pulled out a large key. "Wow, where'd you get that?" said Stella. "I borrowed it from me pa, didn't I?" said Jack with a wide grin. "It's the kitchen back door key. Gladstone her forgot to get it off him when she threw him out. And the kitchen leads to the cellar where the tools are." He chuckled under his breath. "Anyways, I'm sure there's plenty of that kitchen for all of us." Stella beamed back at Jack. His confidence was reassuring, and all her worries about being stuck in past time had disappeared. "Can we go and see my room?" Tom said eagerly when he finally awoke. Jack laughed out loud. "No ways," he said, and shook his head. Stella's watch read exactly 1:30 when they rowed across the lake under the light of the full moon. Whatever time it was here, she concluded it was probably 1:30 in the afternoon at home. She certainly didn't feel tired, and her stomach was only now starting to rumble. The boat drifted in, and as they entered the woods, she switched on her orange torch, which Jack spent 5 minutes studying from all angles and beaming around in the trees. "This is a fancy little flashlight," he said with a wide smile. "Sure ain't seen one like this before." "You can take it when we leave," promised Stella. Stella squeezed Tom's hand tightly as they approached a large door, which in their own flat was the double French door leading from the sitting room to the patio garden. Jack pulled the key from his boot, and seconds later they slipped quietly in. As Stella switched on her torch again, it illuminated not a living room at all, but a large kitchen. The narrow shaft of light beamed slowly around the room, revealing an enormous fireplace piled high with logs, and an array of jugs and kettles sitting in its hearth. Next to the fireplace stood a large black iron double stove, and on the opposite side of the room two rectangular sinks, each with a single tap. In the center of the room stood a long wooden pine table, and from the ceiling there hung so many pots and pans that it looked more like a cook's shop than a kitchen. Stella and Tom stood speechless. "This way," whispered Jack urgently. At the far end of the room he opened a solid wooden door that led them into the enormous walk-in pantry. "Here's where they keep the food. Help yourselves, but be quick." Tom's hungry eyes feasted on a large fruit cake which had a couple of slices taken from it. "Go on, have some," said Jack with a nod. Tom reached up and pulled a chunk of cake away and stuffed it into his mouth. Stella, meanwhile, found a lump of cheese under a dish and some more bread in a wicker basket. She took a bite of the cheese, then tied the rest inside Tom's treasure rag, while Jack stuffed apples and pears into his pockets. "This'll do," Jack whispered sharply. "Let's go." But Tom, with his tummy satisfied, had other ideas. "I'm not going until I see my room," he murmured solemnly. Stella fixed her torch beam in a nasty glare on him. "Tom," she whispered crossly, "do you want us to get caught?" "I don't care," he muttered through clenched teeth, seeing his arms folded, an unblinking gaze, and both feet planted squarely on the ground. Stella knew they were on to a lost cause. "Jack, can we show him?" she pleaded in a whisper. "He won't leave if we don't." Jack shook his head and smiled. "Your little un's got nerve. I like that. Let's go then, but be quiet." Jack led the way through a door that Tom and Stella didn't recognize from their own home, but soon they found themselves climbing a familiar staircase towards the front door. The walls of the main hallway were adorned with large, heavily framed paintings whose subject matter Stella couldn't make out. Jack was now heading for another set of stairs she didn't recognize. Stella darted forward and tugged at his sleeve, and then pointed at the door beside her. "This ain't a bedroom," he whispered. Stella nodded vigorously, then pointed at Tom. Jack gave a puzzled frown. The door was ajar and creaked so loudly when they pushed it open that they all froze. Nothing stirred except the hollow tick of a clock somewhere in the hallway above. Quietly they stepped inside, and Stella switched on her torch. As the beam lit up the room, Tom's mouth fell open. His bedroom was in fact a dining room, and one fit for kings and queens at that. In the center of the room, which spanned the width of both his and Stella's bedrooms, was the vast mahogany dining table, complete with 3 sets of silver candelabras, spaced evenly in a line down the middle. The table was surrounded by about 20 crimson velvet high-backed chairs, and above it hung an enormous chandelier, which shimmered silently in the moonlight filtering in through the shutters. A vast and elaborate gilt frame mirror hung over what was, of course, his fireplace, which stood at one end of the table. Either side of the fireplace and on all the other walls, huge portraits of the Gladstone family looked down on them. "Look over there," whispered Stella, giggling under her hand. Tom looked across to see a portrait of a young girl with a puppy on her lap. A small plaque at the bottom read, "E. M. Gladstone." "That's Emma and Harry," whispered Tom. Tom and Stella had just completed a silent circuit of the room when a distant floorboard creaked. Stella snapped off her torch. "Quick," whispered Jack, turning for the door. But it was too late. The footsteps quickened across the hallway above towards the top of the stairs. Jack glanced around in desperation. His eyes rested on the fireplace. "Up here," he whispered, darting across the room. "Do as I say and don't breathe a word." Jack ducked his head under and up inside the chimney breast. Tom and Stella followed. "Feel up high, there's a ledge. Now cling on and pull your feet into them bricks sticking out. It'll help the little one." Stella reached for the ledge and pulled herself up inside the chimney breast, resting her feet on the bricks below, which jutted out just out of sight of the room. Jack, meanwhile, hoisted Tom up, and soon all three were clinging to the inside of the dark chimney flue, while occasional clouds of soot dusted down on them. The footsteps drew nearer, and as they all looked down, a dim light ebbed into the hearth below before slowly fading away, along with the sound of the steps. "Fiddle! He's gone now," whispered Jack. "We're gonna have to wait here until he comes up, and if he's going for something to eat, we're all done for." Whoever was downstairs was taking a long time going about their business. Stella, bored with waiting, flicked on the torch, almost making everyone fall into the fireplace. "One of Pa's chimneys. Nice brickwork, eh?" whispered Jack proudly. Stella beamed the light up the narrow flue. "Shine the light over there, will you?" Stella obliged. "There it is. J for Jacob. That's my pa's sign. Always in the same place." Tom, ever thoughtful, had an idea. "Can I write my name?" he whispered eagerly. You're a clever nipper, you is. Use this." Jack pulled out the house key and passed it over. Tom dug hard into the brickwork and had soon engraved a lopsided letter T. "Someone's coming," whispered Stella, clicking off the torch. Tom slipped the key into his pocket and grasped back onto the ledge. They all glanced down, holding their breath, as the fireplace was once again flooded with orange light. Tom, who was suddenly starting to sweat, wasn't sure he could hang on much longer. Soot dust covered his hair, his eyelashes, and his nose, which now began to twitch with a sneeze. Already his grip was loosening, but he was determined not to be the one to let them down. Then one final twitch, and "Lucy, Stella, Tom, are you in there?" A child's urgent whisper cut across the darkness. Tom's sneeze evaporated just at the moment his foot slipped and his grip on the ledge gave way. Crash! Down he landed in the heap of fireplace, where he found himself nose to toe with a small pink foot. Slowly he stuck his head out. The foot belonged to Emma. "Tom," she gasped, cupping her hand around her candle, "what are you doing up our chimney?" Tom scrambled out, amidst clouds of black soot, which quickly found a home on her long white gown. Emma gave him a broad grin. "Stella's here," he whispered excitedly, "and Jack." "Jack?" Just then 4 feet dangled down in the fireplace, 2 wearing bright blue plimsolls, 2 clad in tatty brown lace-up ankle boots. "That's Jack," said Tom, pointing at the boots and giggling. Stella and Jack jumped down and emerged dusted with soot. Emma stepped back a pace, her candle flickering violently. "It's the boy thief," she squeaked. "What are you doing here? And what are you doing with Lucy's cousins?" You stole our silver and Mamma's beautiful coin purse, you mean boy. Emma, it's not like that, whispered Stella politely. We came to get food. Please let me explain about Jack. How did you know we were here? Said Tom, frowning. Emma smiled proudly. I saw you come across the lawn, of course, and by the way, you left your binoculars on the table downstairs, silly. Tom gulped and studied his shoes. Anyway, she said, straightening her back, if I'd have known you had the boy thief with you, I'd have woken Mama and Papa. I thought you were with your cousin Lucy coming on a mole hunt. Jeepers, you knows about the moles and all? Blurted out Jack. Emma threw him a nervous glance. So what's it got to do with you? She demanded. Emma, whispered Stella, we all know about the moles. Do you know they have special powers? Emma frowned suspiciously. You see, Emma, Tom and I aren't really from Australia. We're from another time. And Jack didn't steal from your family. It was Crawley. Emma's candle flickered violently again. Then very slowly her eyes began to widen. She opened her mouth and took the deepest of breaths while Stella, Tom, and Jack all froze, waiting for her to scream. The next chapter will be chapter 9, The Dance of the Moles.